Time check for you, 12 hours 8. It is time for your main newscast in detail. According to the 2015 Climate Resilience Strategy and Action Plan for Guyana, climate change will no doubt alter the characteristics of hazards Guyana is exposed to and the nature of variability that is, which will hamper the nation's socio-economic development objectives. The report further notes it is estimated that by 2030, Guyana could be exposed to cumulative annual flood-related losses totaling $150 million, and that an extreme event similar to the serious flooding in 2005, which resulted in losses equivalent to 60% of GDP, could result in some $0.8 billion in losses and harm more than 320,000 people. Former EPA head Dr. Vincent Adams has flagged ExxonMobil's increase in production aboard the Liza Destiny vessel without conducting a fresh environmental impact assessment to examine the possible effects of the same. He said such a move by the oil giant does not only violate safety standards, but also increases the risk of a potential oil spill. The current EIA states that the Liza Phase 1 project would be operated by the Liza Destiny vessel and produce 120,000 barrels of oil per day. This was noted to be the safe limit of production. However, the company and the government have disclosed over the past few months that production rates have been ramped up to over 124,000 barrels per day. In fact, the Bank of Guyana's half-year report said production surpassed nameplate capacity at 124,941 barrels per day, an increase of 65.4% from the corresponding period last year. This, according to Adams, is dangerous and must not be allowed to continue. In fact, he called for Exxon's operations to cease immediately and for an independent investigation to be conducted. Months after fishermen have been complaining about low catch and other ills in the industry, Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa on Wednesday admitted that there has been a noticeable decline in catches over the years and that the government was in full support of having the necessary analyses done to determine the root cause of the issue. Mustafa yesterday met with stakeholders from the fisheries sector to discuss some of the issues faced and how the government can assist with resolving those issues. Fishermen raised concerns about the low catches they are currently experiencing and how it has affected their ability to provide for their families. Mustafa told the fishers that the reason behind low catches in one country may not be the reasons behind low catches in another. He said a number of factors can be causing the low catches. In other news, an analysis of the emissions and climate plans of 58 oil and gas giants has found that most are failing to decarbonize in line with climate science, with Saudi Aramco, ExxonMobil, and Chevron among the worst offenders. This is according to a report released yesterday by the Transition Pathway Initiative, TPI, which is the first to confirm that multiple oil and gas firms are in fact now operating in line with the Paris Agreement's 1.5C pathway. Ultimately, 48 of the 53 companies are set to generate emissions higher than their carbon budget in a Paris-aligned world. This cohort includes some notable firms which claim their net zero frameworks are robust, including BP and Royal Dutch Shell. A particular weakness was found to be the disclosure of indirect emissions and credible targets for reducing them. For oil and gas majors, customers using sold products will typically account for vastly more emissions than their direct operations. The Guyana Public Service Union and the Guyana Trades Union Congress have intensified their calls for a review of the 7% pay increase announced by the government last week. Both unions have dispatched letters to the executive, with the GTUC writing the president asking for an urgent meeting to discuss the issue, and the GPSU writing the attorney general, telling him about his government's breaking of the law. Last Thursday, the Irfan Ali government announced a mere 7% across-the-board salary increase for public servants, retroactive from January 2021. Since then, there has been widespread condemnation of the 7% imposition. Time check for you, 12 hours 13. We will return with the news shortly after the break.
This is GHK Lal.
Shall we now return with your main newscast in detail? 25-year-old Nizamuddin Rafiq, called Shazam, was on Wednesday sentenced to life imprisonment by Justice Sandil Kisun at the Berbice High Court. He had initially pleaded not guilty to the murder of businessman 81-year-old Arthur Rajkumar and his reputed wife, 44-year-old Diane Chamanlal of Bushlot Village, West Coast Berbice, which occurred sometime between January 8th and 9th, 2016. He, however, later opted to plead guilty to the lesser count of manslaughter during trial. Shazam was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after serving 35 years. State prosecutor Abigail Gibbs had detailed previously that the accused and others were smoking marijuana and concocted the plan to rob the couple of their valuables and cash. A fish vendor, Gildat Ramatar, was last Saturday robbed of $900,000 moments after being warned that persons were plotting to attack him. Charged for the offense is 25-year-old Tito Prescott, a father of two of Meadowbank, Georgetown, who denied the charge. The court heard that around 6 hours, Ramatar was at the wharf with his truck selling fish when his friend approached him and informed him that he overheard Prescott and another man plotting to rob him. Shortly after, the defendant, in the company of another, armed with a gun, confronted Ramatar. The court heard that Prescott's alleged accomplice pointed the firearm at Ramatar while Prescott reportedly pushed his hand into the man's pocket and removed his money before making good their escape. Local insurers have taken umbrage to recent anecdotal observations made by a political scientist and co-founder of America's Market Intelligence, Arthur Dearkane, who recently lamented as unrealistic some of the requirements being demanded in Guyana's proposed local content policy for the oil and gas industry, specifically with regard to insurance services. Responding to Dearkane's assertions, the Insurance Association of Guyana and the Guyana Insurance Brokers Association pointed out that his critique of the local capacity of the domestic industry was had despite no consultations with the industry representatives. The representatives said in nowhere within Dearkane's critique was it revealed what research was conducted as to the capacity of the local insurance industry. President Ali, in announcing a raft of new measures to be implemented by the administration to address deficiencies in the timely execution of government contracts, has announced the introduction of a demerit system. He also said firms that have unfinished works on current contracts will be barred from getting any new project. The president was at the time addressing a specially organized meeting between the administration and scores of contractors taking on primarily large-scale contracts, $100 million and above. The president outlined that since timely completion of projects is important, an assessment of every contractor will be done at the end of this year. To this end, President Ali announced that the government would then be introducing a demerit system that will work in such a way that the net value of outstanding work will be transferred to the new year and will become your net value of work in progress. In other news, we now tell you that Bevon Griffith, called Spoonie, who pleaded guilty to the 2017 Christmas Day killing of Sophia resident Selwyn Allen, was sentenced to 18 years in prison when his trial concluded at the Georgetown Supreme Court. The sentence was handed down by Justice Joanne Barlow, who took a number of things into consideration in calculating the judgment. Among other things, Justice Barlow took into consideration that a weapon was used in committing the crime on an unarmed victim. She also considered the serious negative impact Griffith's actions had on the victim's family. Griffith apologized to the family of the deceased, telling the court that he was under the influence of alcohol. According to the facts of the case, Griffith, a drug addict from Kitty, attacked and stabbed Allen after he mistook him for someone whom he claimed had attacked him some time before. And now for your COVID-19 update. A fully vaccinated man from Region 6 who tested positive for COVID-19 has died. As a result of this, Guyana's COVID-19 death toll has moved to 980. 79 new cases were recorded, taking the total number of confirmed cases to 37,524. Out of that number, 19,844 persons are women and 17,680 are men. 12 patients are admitted into the ICU, 75 persons in institutional isolation, 1,722 in home isolation, and 3 in institutional quarantine. To date, a total of 34,822 persons have recovered from the virus. We now turn to your page 7 of the Kaieteur News, Blunt. The new game played by foreigners in oil-rich Guyana is Rent a Citizen. It is getting somebody to stand in the line in place of self. This is how the foreigner jug the system to get business. This is how they pay their way to get what they want. What are Guyanese getting except being used? Used by outsiders, used by local leaders, used by those on top. Time check for you, 12 hours 20. My name is Amrita Koshal, and this was your main newscast in detail.